Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Excuse me. So let's get straight into it.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of yours, and I've always wanted to ask you a number of questions. And um, can you tell us? I'm going to be introducing you to quite a few people. Can you tell us who you are, but also what
Yes,
you do? And one thing I'd like you to talk about is what is the difference with medium and psychic or clairvoyant, please?
absolutely. So I am Calise Simone. I'm a psychic medium. I was born in Australia, grew up in Australia. I now live in the USA, and that's where I've discovered my abilities. I have had the ability to connect to spirit to see the future since I was a very young child. Now, what I do is classified into two categories. You could call it psychic and mediumship. Psychic and clairvoyant is two titles that describe the same ability. As a clairvoyant, you can see things. So it's actually a French word that means clear seeing. And that allows me to see the future, the past, the present, all of that kind of stuff. The mediumship is the ability to speak to loved ones in the spirit world. So when our loved ones cross over, they don't actually disappear. They just shed the physical body and the spirit lives on. So that's where the mediumship comes in.
Okay. So when you were young, and I've always
Mm.
wondered this with you because you're very good,
Oh, thank you.
very good. Because in your
Thank you.
world, there's a lot of frauds.
There is, and it's a shame because it discredits those of us that are genuine and do this with a natural ability. I think in any industry there are people that want to capitalize off something for quick money, and it's understandable if someone's desperate that they'll desperate times desperate measures, but
Mm.
it is a shame because it's a world where people can be taken advantage of if you are not ethical in your practice.
Yes. So when you were young, were you different? Like, did you sort
I
of
was.
go, hang on, I can sort of
I
see
was
the
so
results of this.
skeptical.
Yeah.
But I could see it. No, it was very bizarre because, I was this child I grew up with this ability to see dead people, basically. I could see dead people. I could feel things before they would happen. I would have dreams and premonitions about things before they would happen. But I figured everyone could do that. I didn't know I wasn't normal.
Mm.
And my mom would always say, oh, it's just your imagination. It's not real. And I believe she did that just as a way to help me cope growing up, because to explain to a 4-year-old that there's angels and devils and afterlife is a bit too intense in her opinion. So she said, oh, I just told you not to worry about it and dismiss it. So growing up, I had this ability. I could see auras as well. I still can. And I just assumed it was normal. So I remember, gosh, I must have been in my early 20s. I remember sitting at a cocktail bar. I was on a date with some guy. And I was like, so what do you think happens when you die? Because I think when you die, and that's it. But like, do you think there's an afterlife? And I don't even remember what he said. I just remember laughing at myself in hindsight, thinking like I had this ability, I was seeing things and I still denied it. And at that time, I was working in finance. I've got a history of, I was a trader on Wall Street, worked at a hedge fund, all that fun stuff. Yeah, so not just a pretty face, but I was I still am very into science and academics. And so to then try and blend that with this ability I have to connect to the spirit world is something that has always been a bit of a stretch, but I'm getting better at it as time goes on.
So when you connect with dead people, do you
Mm,
see them? Or like, okay, let me go back a bit. So let's say
sure.
you do readings for people and you're in demand, you have to book months in advance usually and all this sort of stuff. But
Mm.
when you go from one person to the other, do you sometimes not able to connect with dead people? Like, is the energy different sometimes? Or do they just pop in? Or are you seeing them? Are they talking to you? What happens?
Okay, so I have not had a situation that I can recall where I haven't seen a dead person when I've been asked to see one. To date, it's a 100% track record, so that's pretty good. Um, I will say connections get difficult in two scenarios. The one scenario is if the person who's crossed over was not particularly religious or was particularly shy or was particularly low energy when they passed. For example, maybe they had a long illness and they're resting, or maybe they've done some stuff that they don't want to face just yet. In those scenarios, another spirit will come through and sort of almost be like a chaperone and communicate through them like a spirit guide. That might be another relative. It might be just some other spirit that's working with them. So I'll still be able to see that person, but there'll be a bit of an in-between. In terms of what I experience when I sit down with someone, I didn't cover the second part. The second part is if the person I am sitting with is not as open as they think they are to this work. And it's
Right.
very easy to sit there and say like, oh yeah, I'm open to it, whatever. But every now and then, if you've sometimes I see it with people who are a bit scared or perhaps just different personality traits. They may not be as open as they think. And so even if something is accurate, they either don't want to admit it to themselves or they just don't want to admit that the spirit world could be real. I don't get a lot of people like that, but they are out there.
Do you ever hold
So
back info?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you ever hold back info if it's not that good? Like, do you ever filter it because you feel like it's good for the person, or
No, I try not to. In the beginning, it was scary to deliver heavy messages, but what I realized is people are coming to me because they want to hear the truth. They don't want to be told things to make them happy or to scare them. It's even though I have to legally say that, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, all these things. It's not really entertainment in that regard. Like it can be entertaining, but I'm not there to do a magic show, for example. I'm there to tell them guidance that they're seeking from the spirit world. So I would almost say it's a bit unethical. I may phrase things in a softer way just so that it doesn't scare them too much, because in the end, how things play out specifically can vary slightly from what I see.
yeah,
So, for example, I might see that, say I see like a very bad thing as an example. Like, say I see a car and it's screeching on the brakes and it stops suddenly. Now, one could say, hey, that's a near miss. Hey, that's a car accident. Hey, that's a movie that you're watching. Like, we don't actually know until it happens what it actually is. So I try to give objective information which is as specific as possible so that when that situation comes up, they can decide how to interpret it themselves the best way. I try not to put spins on things,
yeah.
basically.
I was going to
Mm.
ask you, like, I've got a million questions, but I was going to ask
Go
you.
for it.
So, if you gave a message to someone, are you reading their energy at that point in time based on the path? Because we all have free will, right? So,
To an extent.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So you can make choices, but can the person sort of go, okay, and then make different choices and change that outcome? Or is it like, because you're reading their sort of position at that point in time in their life, can you be like a helpful person to say, you can make other choices and end up in a different spot sort of thing? Like,
I believe so. And particularly if there's something that they don't prefer, especially when I see illness coming up, what I like to do first is I like to ask spirit, okay, what is the cause of this illness? Are they living a stressful lifestyle? Are they not taking care of their body? Is it avoidable? And if so, how? And then I'll say to the person, hey, it looks like you're overworking yourself. If you keep going in this direction, it's going to start affecting your physical body. And I may have seen something that looks like a heart attack or looks like cancer, but I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose. So I may not say, hey, you're going to have a heart attack.
yeah,
But I might say, like, your physical body will suffer and it might be quite chronic if you don't change now, but you have time to change now. So I like to empower people to choose a future that they would prefer.
you're right. On my second last reading, because I get quite a few readings from you over time, when I
Yeah.
feel they're necessary. But you said to me,
Mm.
you must go to the doctor now. There's something going on with your digestive system. And you said,
Okay.
don't delay it. And you're right. I had the biggest appendix, like 20 times as big as it should. And it was going into my bowel, the thing. And I had to get it taken straight out. And you were right. I had no,
Wow.
I had no
You
idea.
know, it's amazing what can come through in a reading. And,
Yeah.
often there are things where I had a friend, one of my friends in New York, and she also, again, I'm not a doctor, but she had digestive issues for the longest time. She's like, I have this chronic illness, I have this chronic condition. I'm like, no, you don't, it's an infection. And she's like, no, I've been to the gastro, like it's a chronic condition. I'm like, no, you have an infection. 2 years later, she comes to me, she said, oh, I had an infection. I took the antibiotics and it's gone. I was like, told you. I was so happy for her, you know, but sometimes things just come through so clearly that I really stand my ground with them. You know, if spirit shows me and I know that it's a clear message, I'll definitely give it to the person.
Oh, you did? Well, last reading, which was only 2 weeks ago or something, you just got straight on, didn't even say hello or anything. You said, your energy's blocked at the moment. You'll be finding things very difficult. And I had the worst month at work. It's
Oh
free
my
to
goodness.
freeze up a bit now. You were so right. I was like, I got off the reading and I rang Jordan. I said, she's amazing. She's just like picked it up straight away. And I was like, yeah. But anyway, so when you see, you know, in
Thank
the
you.
spirit realm,
Yes.
like, are they around us all the time, or is it
Yes.
like, do they go away? Like, what
Yeah.
actually is going on there?
Where do they go? Where do they live?
Yeah,
So
like, yeah,
the way I explain it, there's so many different ways to think about it. But if you think of it like a sponge, the physical reality is a sponge, and you put the sponge in water, and the water is the spirit world. So the two coexist at the same time. And then if you consider also, another analogy would be, you turn on a radio, like the old school radios where you had to wind the dial to get to a different station. So if you tune into different frequencies, you can hear different radio shows. So by tuning into different frequencies, I can see spirit, or I can just turn that off and focus on the physical reality. As a medium, I have the ability to raise my energy, raise my vibration, and see those spirits, or to switch it off. I am in a position, I don't know if you'd call it fortunate or unfortunate, where my natural frequency is quite high. So I do see spirit even when I'm trying to switch it off.
really.
But there,
I was gonna just, I
yeah,
just wrote that down. I was like,
I must be psychic.
when you walk down the street, are you like seeing these things? What's going on?
So it's really funny that you asked that, because I have had situations where I see people and I don't know they're dead until I look back and they're gone. And so there's only been once where I've made a mistake and it was a real person, and it turned out to be a very good friend of mine. We had a laugh about it. But there have been occasions, like I was in the Hamptons one night walking back to the Airbnb I was staying there. I just popped out to get some food or something. And I remember it was probably about 9 o'clock, pitch dark. And I looked across the street and there was a woman and her child playing sort of in a park area. And I thought, oh, that's a bit strange that they're playing at nighttime under the street lamp. And I thought, I better keep walking quickly, because they'll stop me and ask me why I'm walking. Because everyone I'd run into that night was like, why are you walking in the snow? Like, it's snowing. We're in the Hamptons. I just wanted a winter break. And I lived so close to the supermarket. There was no point in taking a cab. So I was like, I'll go for a fresh walk. So I was like, don't look back. Don't make eye contact. They'll talk to you. And then I thought, hang on a minute, just look back. Like, this voice said, look back. And I looked back, gone. It was in the space of about 4 seconds, just disappeared. And there's nowhere they could have gone to. Anyway, I later found out that there's an energy that lives in that area, and it's like a known thing. So there are times where if I don't look back, I won't know the person's passed away. But then there's other times where I'll just get a flash of a face or a person, and they're full color 3D like you and I are right now.
Really? Do they breathe?
No, they actually don't, because they don't have a physical body, right? So the physical body is powered by oxygen and nitrogen and all of those things in our environments. If you don't have a physical body, you don't need to fuel it.
Yeah, right.
It's the
I know it
essence.
sounds weird, but I've
Yeah.
always wondered, like, do you breathe in the next life?
Yeah, it's a great question. But most of the time when I'm doing a reading, I'll either see them physically around me, or I'll see them in my mind's eye. But even if I see their face in my mind's eye, I will feel their energy sort of over my shoulder, very close to me, or I'll see them over the shoulder of the person I'm reading for.
Are they talking to you? Like, how do you, are you, is it like a vibrational block of information, or are they talking to you? Are they standing there?
If I focus on them, yes. So the analogy I use for this, because I've had to explain this a lot of times, so I've come up with a lot of analogies. Think of it like you're sitting in a cafe and there's lots of people around you having conversations, and there might even be music on in the cafe. Now, you can focus on the music in the cafe. You can focus on the people at the table in the corner. You can focus on the person in front of you. And what I focus on is what I tune into and what I can hear from moment to moment.
I see. It's a bit like when someone's talking over there and you're talking to this person, you're trying to tune in to hear what they're saying because you're,
Exactly.
what are they, but still paying attention to that. It is, are tarot cards real?
Yeah, in what way? Like, do you mean,
Like,
are they
I've always
accurate?
been
Can they be
skeptical of
used?
tarot cards. Like, are they,
Okay.
you know, can you explain them a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So a traditional tarot deck, I believe, has 72 cards in it. There's major arcana, minor arcana, and then other cards in between. So it's divided between swords, rods, coins, and cups. This is just traditional tarot. There's also like
Yeah.
oracle cards and things like that. Tarot is a divination art form. And if one were to study it and combine it with a psychic ability, you could get very accurate messages out of it. I believe that, this is hard to say, but there may be people that train in tarot that are extremely good with tarot. I've had some tarot readings that have just blown my mind from other readers that are professionals. And then I've seen people read tarot cards who are very beginners and just use it as a form of divination, and it hasn't really done anything for me. I believe it depends on the reader. And at the end of the day, the reader is using the pictures on the tarot card to prompt images, responses, and messages with psychic energy or from the spirit world. So a true psychic and a true medium doesn't need tarot cards, but the tarot cards can be used to complement their ability.
What about your energy? So, like, if your energy is a little off one day, and obviously, do you do this every day? Like, or do you just have, do you like, because you seem to be very full all the time, but like,
Yeah,
I know it's your
I
full.
try not to do it every day,
Yeah, I
but
was
at
going
the
to
same
ask, what's your
time,
structure like? Like,
there'll be moments where I'm thinking, gosh, I wonder why this person hasn't called me or texted me. And then I remember, oh, Calise, you're a psychic. Just ask spirit. Oh, yeah. So I can use it here and there, not necessarily in formal readings. But I would say I tend to chat to the spirits at least once or twice a day,
yeah,
just naturally.
yeah.
Yeah. But I spend a lot of time in the spirit world
So,
energetically.
you meditate?
Not regularly. I
No.
should. And I
Yeah.
tell people to. But in the beginning, I did. And I think that opens up your intuition immensely. If I meditated on a regular basis, it might be a bit too much for me in my current state, because every time I do a reading, it's like a meditation. And I used to find if I meditated before I went to sleep, I'd see spirits all night and never go to sleep. So I try
Yeah.
to do all my spiritual work earlier in the day, not too close to bedtime.
Mm. You know, people who commit suicide and people who die naturally, do they go to different places?
I believe that there is one afterlife that we all go to. And people who have had any kind of trauma in the physical life, when they cross over, they will go to a special place for healing
Mm.
before they are sort of released into the rest of the spirit world. I
Okay.
don't believe there's like a heaven and a hell where some people are rewarded and some people are punished, but
Mm.
I feel that we all face our own energy, and that can be, and this is just my belief, but that can be perceived as pleasant or unpleasant depending on what energy you're facing and what you've worked through in your lifetime and what you are still yet to work through. So if you think of it like a hospital, like
Oh,
where you
yeah.
go for treatment, there's different divisions where different people go for different things. So, maybe if you were a young baby and you had SIDS and you passed before you grew into a child, you might go into a special ward. Or maybe, if you passed in combat and you've got all these like huge injuries and you've passed before your parents, then you go into another ward. If you're an orphan, things like that. And what I tend to see is some of the spirits who've been there a while work to receive other spirits when they cross over. So if a child passes without parents, there'll be like a special lady, like a really sweet old lady that comes and collects them and helps them integrate and things like that.
That's so good. I love the hospital analogy.
Mm,
That's
mm.
great. Do we all have guides?
We do.
We do,
We
like
do.
everybody.
Everybody, even the people that you might think don't deserve them.
Yeah. And what
Everybody does.
like what do they do? Like, I've always wondered, do they, I know it sounds weird, but if you're having sex, are they hanging out there just watching you?
I hope not. I believe that they give us privacy. I have found that when you want them to be there, they'll be there, and otherwise they hang back.
Yeah.
So, they give us privacy when we need it, but at the same time, they are there to nudge us, push us in the right direction, to give us those moments. And there might be a moment, for example, in business or at work where you say, wow, that's a great idea. I can't believe I came up with that. Well, we didn't. Spirit gave it to us, is what I've experienced. Most of the time they're sitting there going, oh God, it's only been 3 weeks of trying to tell you this, Calise. And I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm so smart. you know so the more in tune you are with your intuition, the more you'll feel their energy. And
Mm,
that can also be coincidences, synchronicities, timing, as well as just really amazing moments that feel like good luck or miracles.
mm. Before I met you, and I was
Mm.
introduced to you by a friend a few years ago,
Mm.
I'd see a couple of people over time, more just like, I don't know if it's curiosity or not, but more just maybe an energy reset and see what they had to say. But they were
Mhm.
always like older ladies that were just living in like very like they're pretty
With
like,
crazy hair and tie-dye
yeah,
shirts
and
and yeah.
or they always had no money, and it was like I was like, why don't they just like forecast themselves to win something, or I don't know, like what happened?
Yeah.
Can you read for yourself or not read for yourself?
I can. I've won the lottery a couple of times, like small amounts. But I do find that a lot of people that do this work, just to address the first part of your question, a lot of people that do this work have a very religious mentality around it. And it's
Mm,
the thing of organized religion focuses on guilt and shame, a lot of organized religion, guilt and shame, and sort of not wanting for much. I think there are some people that fall into this industry who do it because they don't have other things they can do, but there are some people that are pulled towards it because they have no choice.
mm,
Um, it wasn't very widely accepted 20, 30 years ago. Even when I started doing it, it was like coming out and telling people, about your sexuality. It was like really taboo 10 years ago,
yeah.
or 15 years ago. And, it's only in the last couple of years that I feel comfortable openly talking about it. There are even some people now that I just don't tell them what I do and they don't ask. So it's okay. But I wonder if that can play into why the energy has changed in the industry.
Mm,
I don't know. I would say that the people I know who do it at the level I do it at are very successful, are well put together, are very intelligent. And I think when you do this work, your personality translates through the work. So if you're a person who has it together in the first place, your readings will be a bit more together
mm,
when
mm.
they come out.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And all your friends bother you?
Some
Are
of
all
them
your
do.
friends
I've
like,
had to
are all your friends
have.
going, please, can I just ask a question? Because I would, if I hung out with you, I'd be like, please help me. What's going on here?
I've had to learn really strong boundaries, but I've also found that the closest friends I have that I still have today are ones that I made before I started doing this work.
Yeah,
I find it really hard to make new friends.
yeah.
But luckily I was a very social person when I was younger. So I have a big group of friends. I've obviously narrowed it down as I've gotten older, but sometimes they will text me and say, hey, I'm asking you as a friend. I don't want psychic advice. What do you think of this
Oh,
person I'm dating?
sure.
Yeah, I know, but I'm like, okay, well.
You charge them?
I try not to read for them at all because it just gets so messy.
How bad?
Because what if it's like, if I tell them something they don't want to hear,
Yeah.
they're going to get upset at me. But if I tell them something they want to hear and it's not true, they're going to get upset at me. So I've just started like sort of saying to them, can you just go to this other person? Or, once you're a friend, you're no longer a client. You can either be a client or a friend, but you can't be both.
Yeah. One thing I do like
Mm.
about you that I was talking to a friend yesterday about, because you read for Tara the other day, and a
Mm.
few things you said on there were like, whoa. And I said to the guy friend, I said, you should call Calise.
Mhm.
And he's like, yeah, I will actually, because you got to be careful. Some people are like, yeah, whatever. And like,
Yep.
I have a son like that. Like I was telling him about Tara's reading you did, and he's like, and I'm like, and I've got another son who's like, yeah, tell me more. Um,
Yep.
so you're right, but it's like the thing I really like about your style is you don't fluff around. You don't
Mm.
you don't fish for stuff, like you just like, because I emailed you one time
Okay.
it would have been 2 years ago or a year, something like that. And I got a reading and I said, did you read the email first? Because it was like a bit going on in my life at that time. And you said, no, I never read emails. I don't,
Yeah.
I just read it. And I was like, really? Because I thought I
Mm.
was helping you out a bit. And, and I was like, and you said,
Yeah.
I would have never read an email before a reading. But when you get on, you're always so straight into it. And it's, like I think a lot of psychs go, oh, do you know, like the blue car or this or whatever? And you're
Yeah.
always like boom, 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 boom. And I really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just depends on I don't
It's
there's
just,
always just
you're
so
good.
much to
You're
say.
good.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to, but thank you. I'll accept the compliment. Yeah.
Tell me about
Thanks.
numerology. I've got like
Hmm.
10 minutes or so, so I'm just going to get as much as I can because a lot of people know I'm interviewing you today and they're like, oh, ask her this,
Okay.
ask her that.
Of course.
Can you tell
Anything.
me
Yeah.
about numerology, please? And one,
Yes.
is it true? Is it accurate? And what does it actually all mean?
Cool. Yeah. So numbers are awesome and so much fun. Numerology is another form of divination. And with numerology, you can look into the meaning of your life, the purpose of your life, aspects of your personality, how you sync with certain events in life, certain dates, certain property numbers, things like that. So whenever I move or get an apartment, get a house, I always look at the numerology and I always consider, is this a good fit for my personality? And to date, I have found it to be very, very accurate. For
Really?
me, it's more, yeah, it's more of a passion for me than it is something that I do as a business. But at the same time, so is the psychic and mediumship. This stuff was never something that I planned to do or strived to become. The work kept chasing me. I tried to quit this job, gosh, at least 4 or 5 times before I surrendered to it. But yeah, numerology is the idea that there's energy around numbers, and numbers have a frequency that can affect outcomes. Similar to astrology in the sense that, it's an external force that can affect our experience of the everyday. But I think it's one of those ones where, depending on how much you look into it, you will it can be polarizing. People either love it or they're just not into it at all.
I'm a bit like that. I'm a bit like, I'm not sure where I stand with it because people say number 12 is not good, but I've lived in a couple of 12 houses and I don't
I
know.
mean, 12 houses is a 3 property, which for whatever your life path is, could be an excellent match.
Yeah, like someone said, oh, 12, this is a lady, a little bit crazy years ago. It was
Okay.
like, no, 12 is like no money or something. And my mate said to me one day, oh, 4 is, I lived in a 4 house, and then 4 is
Yeah.
death. And I'm like, it really
That's
stuck in my,
only,
yeah, it stuck in
yeah.
my mind. And I'm like,
Okay.
what
That
did you,
comes
I
from
was like,
Chinese
why did you say
culture.
that to me?
Yeah. I don't know if it's Mandarin or Cantonese, but the number 4 is say, ya yi san say. And then yeah, you already know this because you work in real estate, but the word for death is also say, so it just sounds similar. But
Uh,
in numerology, 4 means stability, it means getting your act together, and it means pillars of growth. So if you're looking for a property that will help you put down roots and have a good foundation, a 4 house might be a good match.
so do you do numerology for people? Like, can they consult on that, or you just don't do that as
Oh,
a,
they could. I mean, I do it as a passion, and
uh,
I would be happy in a session to integrate it for people. Every now and then I will pull it out during a reading just to help get that extra bit of guidance if I feel it's necessary.
mm,
Um, but nothing's off limits. I mean, I'll even pull out tarot cards if spirit tells me to do it. I just let them rule the show.
really?
Mm.
What does 1111 mean? I see it all the time on my phone. I seem to always look at my phone at 1111, and Tara and I take a screenshot and send it to each other. What does it
That's
mean?
so nice. So when you see 1111, it means you're in synchronicity with the energy around you. I interpret it as a hello from the spirit world. So it's your spirit guide saying, hey, you're on point, you're on track. When one has that connection, it's always a time of very high frequency energy. So it's a great time to think good thoughts. It's a great time to make a wish or think of things that you want to attract in your life. But it's basically just spirit giving you a chance to have an energy boost for the day.
You said aura before.
Yes.
Does everyone have like different auras? How do you fix your aura? How do you make energy go like that? Like, what is it? I know it's like living well and all that sort of stuff, but any advice for people that might
Yes.
be feeling a bit down, or people, that sort of stuff?
Yeah. The first thing is, as you said, self-care. The the way you treat yourself is the way you treat energy, which is kind of the way energy treats you. So taking care of yourself, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, being around the right people, avoiding drugs and alcohol, moderate amounts of caffeine, all of that stuff is going to help cleanse your energetic body. Considering like what you do on a daily basis, is it something that brings you joy, or is it something that kind of makes you feel weird at the end of the day? You know, that's going to affect your aura as well. What I find expands people's aura the most is activities that put them in a state of flow or in a state of being in the moment. So if I go to a Broadway show or like watch people in a musical or acting, their auras can be so bright that sometimes I can't even see the actor on the stage. And it used to make me really frustrated because I'd pay all this money to go to Broadway and all I could see was a big blue blob on the stage, not the person. But in those types of settings, public speaking is also another one where people's aura gets really bright, musical performance, or even just, you know, talking as we are now, when one person has a deep spiritual conversation with another person, both of their auras tend to get brighter as they get deeper into the topic.
Two questions before we go. I know your time is limited, but if a house, I want to talk about public speaking for a sec, but if a house is not selling, and I'm in real estate, you may or may not have advice around this, but what
I do.
Yeah, like I know things like
I have lots of opinions and advice.
yeah. Like sometimes I just feel sometimes people just aren't connecting with the house. What can we do?
So what I've done for my clients in the past, particularly those that are real estate investors and developers, is to go in and do an assessment of the property. And I can do this remotely as well. Generally, it'll have something to do with the energy of people that have lived there before, or something that has taken place on the land before. Some examples include a commercial property that was not selling. And I discovered that I even said to this person, I was like, I never went into this establishment even before you wanted to sell it because I just never felt good going in there. And it turned out that the manager who was running the place was a very angry person, hadn't dealt with their anger, and it was resonating out into the space. So we did a big cleansing on the property. It sold right away and they got the price for it that they wanted, which was really good. Another one was a house in a particularly rough part of Sydney. And I know this person doesn't mind me talking about it because she's shared it with many people before. She was so delighted. It was on the market for months. And in Sydney, that's really, really uncommon. And I think it was to do with the previous tenant. This is going back about 8 years now. It was to do with the tenant that they'd rented it out to. And it was just one afternoon, a cleansing of the property, get rid of their energy, clean it all out. It sold in 3 weeks.
I've always wondered this. So the energy of the previous owner. Yeah, can you hear?
Yeah, no, I just thought of something else. Also, if someone died on the property. When I walk into a property, I can straight away feel if someone's died there. Now, the average person might not feel that, but they will feel a lack of energy, like a very dead vibe. And I can't remember where it was, whether it was in Brisbane or in Sydney, but I remember walking around a particular house and I was with my mom at the time and I said, hey, someone's died here. And she goes, do you think so? And I said, yeah. And then we did a bit of research, found out, yeah, the person had passed away. And that's why just everything felt like a post-nuclear war zone energy to me. I can feel it right away.
Interesting. I've always wondered is because the owner of the house that's selling all from before, does that stay? And someone else has got to connect with that energy. So is there something
Yeah, it can overlap for a period of time. Yes, let's talk about that, what people can do. So particularly in New York City, where I've lived for a really long time, there's a lot of overlap between energies and overlap between tenants. And so what me and my spiritual friends tend to do is when we move in, we get a feel of the place. And if we feel it's manageable, we'll take the apartment. If it's not manageable, we're not even gonna consider it. But the first thing to do,
what do you mean?
Like, how heavy is it? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the heaviest, 0 being awesome, light, breezy, whatever. I could probably handle up to a 6 or a 7, but if it was a 9 or a 10, someone very dark with a lot of problems had lived there, I don't think I would even bother. I'd just, move on. And there was a place I saw in Bushwick that was in an old I don't know what kind of building it was. It was just an older building from a long time ago. They'd refurbished it. And it was a gorgeous apartment at a wonderful price. And my partner at the time was like, we've got to take this apartment. I was like, no, no. I would be crying in the corner every single day if we took this place. That's the worst vibes. He's like, okay. Real estate agent was not having any of it, but that's all right. We moved on and found a lovely home. So what you can do first thing is physical cleaning. So every time you physically clean, you are bringing up the energy of the previous person, previous owner, previous tenant, and putting your own energy down. I have a friend who's heavily into Shinto culture. She uses salt. So like Japanese superstition, she puts salt in the corner of the rooms. Some people put quartz crystals in the corner of the rooms to raise the vibration. I find putting plants around, like pot plants, even if they're fake, even if they're not real plants, it still raises the vibration of a room. Bringing in a lot of happy energy. Have social gatherings at your house, have dinner parties, have just bring in new vibrations, have children around, anything that brings a young, fresh energy in should quite quickly override the energy of that place. And then you can also use more religious tools like bells or incense, smudging, things like that. If all else fails, find a medium and get them to clear it out for you.
Yeah, so if people are having an issue with their house and it's an energy thing, they can contact you and you can do that remote. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A couple of quick questions, and then
Sure.
do you do anything between appointments? This is a personal thing,
Yeah,
like, because
of
you go
course.
from one to another, and then like, how do you prepare? Because I'm interested with the energy preparation. Because if you've been on one heavy reading, what do you do for the next? Because I think it's good for people to understand this in life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on how I feel after the reading, and every reading is different. Some readings I'll be so energized and I'll feel amazing, and I'll be so ready for the next one. And other readings, it's so heavy, I have to just sit and stare at the wall for like sometimes up to 35 minutes just to come back into my body, because it can be so heavy. And it's not to do with the trauma of the person or what they've been through, because trust me, I've seen what I consider the full spectrum. It's just the energy on the day. It's just the energy on the day. So a lot of the time I'll plan to do nothing. And it might be anything from just sitting and relaxing, going for a walk, taking a nap, reading my emails. Sometimes I have to do things that are very, very normal, like, listening to music or reading the news, or like, I don't like to read the news, but sometimes I have to just sort of bring myself back into the physical world. And then I sort of am able to reset for the next session. I rarely go to meditation because the reading is such a deep meditation for me. So for me, my biggest challenge in this work is switching off rather than switching on.
How many appointments do you do in a day usually?
It varies. At the peak, I was doing, like, for events and things, oh God, 30 or more.
Gee.
But yeah, it was too much. And then I cut it down to about
What's
between
your
6
ideal?
and
What's your
10.
ideal day?
My ideal is probably about 4.
Or
I
yeah.
don't really want to do more than 4 a day. Yeah. I mean, I can, but then at the end of the day, I'll just be a zombie.
I'm sure you can pick and choose. I've got one question about me, then I want everyone to work out where you
Of course.
where
Yeah.
they can get you. So
Thanks.
public speaking and myself, it's such a
Yes.
challenging time, and you brought it up. I get asked to speak a lot, and I say no all the time, basically based on fear, because um I've I like, when I speak from the heart, it's good, but I feel like, I've been around a while. I don't know if I want to keep telling the same story. All these things go into my mind. How can I, and it's probably for other people as well, I think nerves get the best of me when at that point when they ask me. So I just say no. And I've spoken many, many times, like hundreds and hundreds of times. And some of them are amazing. And some of them I just sort of like, they're okay. I'm sure people think it's okay. But in myself, I'm like, whatever. What can I do there if I want to speak more and share stuff? What should I be doing to manage my energy? Any advice?
I do. I have a few pieces of advice on this, because I used to get really, really bad stage fright when I was younger. And then I started winning public speaking awards, and I sat there and I was like, what changed? What changed? What changed? For me, it was just preparation. So the more I prepared, the more I felt calm. But what I realize now, actually, what that change was, is it was managing my nervous system.
Yeah.
So if you do things on a regular basis that calm your nervous system, meditation, swimming, being outdoors, anything that calms you down, and, you know, like cutting down on stimulants, things like that, your nervous system and your brain will start to reprogram away from anxiety response into being more present. And for me, it was actually doing things like martial arts and practices that really calmed me down. So it was physical exercise, meditation, all combined together. So the first thing I would suggest is, hey, look at ways that you can calm your nervous system on a daily basis, maybe even a few times a day. And that way, when you are in a stressful situation, you'll only sink to the level of your training, so to speak. You won't sink below that. So when you get a spike in energy, instead of going right up to the shaking and, you know, sweating
Yeah, like
response,
my
you might
adrenaline goes
just,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, you might just go to like, oh, I'm excited and I'm ready to get out there kind of response. So the first thing is managing your nervous system. The second thing you can do is obviously visualization. But what I have found works the most for me is, can I swear on this show, or do we have to keep it clean?
Yeah.
Okay. Warning everyone, I don't normally talk like this, but in the context of what we're talking about, phrase, fuck it.
Yeah.
You just get out there and you go, fuck it. But the thing is, you have to
Yeah.
remind yourself, people want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
You know, people want to hear your story. You are helping them. And I know with the work I do that if I don't get out there and help connect people, because I have to do stage shows and things like that. And I always think, oh, that's the best thing ever after I've done it. But going up on stage, I'm always like, oh no, I hope it goes well. And, you know, it's
That's
the
what I
moment of
do.
doom.
And I'm
Yeah,
not being a medium. I'm just talking.
no,
Yeah.
everyone goes through it. Even, you know, performers and pop stars, they all have the same thing. And afterwards you're like, oh, I'm the king of the world. And before you're like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. But that also means that you care.
Yeah.
But the phrase fuck it seems to get me through a lot of scary moments of just like, look, I'm gonna try, I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah.
And the people just want to have fun. So if I have fun, everyone will have a good time.
That's such good advice. I will do that. Thank you. And now,
Excellent.
how do people find you?
Yes, they can find me at my website, which is KaliseSimone.com, or on social media at Calise Simone. I'm mainly on Instagram. I try not to be on too many platforms, but you'll probably find me on every platform that you look for.
Elise, you're amazing. Like, I don't recommend many things, but I recommend everyone catch up with you at some point in their life, because they'll probably get addicted like I am. And I love talking to you. I genuinely get excited every sort of 6 months. I'm like, oh yeah, it's about right time for Calise to catch up again. You've
Thanks,
been
Matt. It's
amazing
always
for
a
our,
pleasure.
no problem. You've been amazing for our family. Tara reads, you read for Tara, read for myself. You've been fantastic. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. See ya. Enjoy the day.
Thank you. Bye. You too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.